it's on fire and burning.
This is what the stretch of I-75 looked like more than 2 hours after the initial pileups. Charred trucks and cars line the interstate next to cars and people who somehow, miraculously, were unscathed. The accidents happened almost simultaneously in both the north and southbound lanes as traffic headed toward the Hiwassee Bridge in a heavy fog.
I've been all up and down looking and saw more bodies than I care to see.
An 11-year-old girl from Virginia was pulled from this wreck. She survived. Her mother did not. Ed Brown pulled the girl from the car.
I put in 12 years of law enforcement before I went full-time driving a truck, and I guess this is the worst wreck I've ever seen. It really gets your stomach in a knot just to think about it, especially when it gets this close to Christmas.
That sentiment was echoed by everyone here, rescue workers and survivors. Many who were uninjured but still shaken up were taken to a nearby elementary school.
Anybody that does not have does not have a drivable vehicle, please come over here. We've got a bus to take you over to the school.
I'm going back.
You're
with somebody.
on the bus?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Do you need me to go with you?
No.
Help you? Okay.
I'm all right.
Okay.
As the day wore on, the body count grew. One rescue worker told us so many bodies were burned beyond recognition, it might take a while to identify them all.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's go. We got a couple more in here.
2 highway troopers were also injured, but not in car crashes. They were hurt when they were overcome by fumes by the organic peroxide and liquid nitrogen that spilled from 2 of the tankers. The men were hospitalized. Now, this may have been the worst traffic accident in the state, and indeed on this stretch of highway, but it's certainly not the first.
Many folks around here still remember Easter morning in 1974. 6 people died in that wreck. As Kendra Farm reports, fog also played a major role in that accident.
You just couldn't see. You would, I don't know how far back, but you'd be driving and it was clear just like this, only cold in the morning, and then all of a sudden you hit fog, and then just right into that, you saw brake lights.
But you didn't have to be involved in this disaster to know that fog was the main cause. Rescue officials say this isn't the first time they've pulled victims out of wreckage on this stretch of I-75. Over the past 15 years, there have been at least 4 major chain collisions in this area around the Hiwassee River Bridge.
The ones that I'm familiar with, this is by far the worst because there were so many fires involved. Several of the DOAs were very severely burned while trapped in vehicles.
Experts say the area around the Hiwassee River between Calhoun and Charleston is a known death trap. On calm, clear mornings, heavy fog forms on the river because the water is warmer than the surrounding area.
Most of the time we do have some fog, but this come in all at one time.
So there wasn't, so you're saying that there didn't need to be a trooper at each end? You know what I'm talking about.
At the time that I come through here, no.
Back in the early 70s, when there was a forecast for fog, the State Highway Patrol would put a trooper at each end of the warning area. Then after the disaster of '74, they put up these blinking signs. They didn't think they needed the troopers anymore, and consequently, there hasn't been a pileup for several years. But after today, officials say they're looking at it all over again.
Something else that's being looked into is whether Bowater's settling ponds are partly to blame. That, too, was part of the investigation into the '74 deadly pileup.
State supposedly came in and done a study, you know what I mean, and they stated that if my memory serves me correct, that it wasn't involved, but I feel that, you know, they need to come back and redo it.
Because of the magnitude of today's accident, officials say there's no telling how long the investigation will take. But one thing's for sure, anyone who keeps this picture in mind while driving down this stretch of highway will likely remember the fog can be a deadly enemy. In McMinn County, Kendra Farn, News Center 12.
Another footnote on the investigation. We've just learned that officials with the National Transportation Safety Board are flying in tonight to investigate the accident.
Now, the response from area residents to the accident has been overwhelming. Because of the number of injuries, a large amount of blood was needed from hospitals and blood banks. We put out the call for donors, and many of you responded. In fact, Blood Assurance was flooded with volunteers.
It's amazing. We came over thinking we could be here in 30 minutes and back to the office, and it's turned into 2 hours, but that's okay.
It makes you feel good to be helped.
Sure, I'm glad.
Now, Athens Community Hospital and Bradley Memorial's emergency rooms were flooded with patients. Only 6 of those injured were transported to Erlanger Medical Center. Mobile Newsroom reporter Dan Howell is live from Bradley Memorial tonight. And Dan, how did the hospital handle the situation when the injuries started coming in?
Well, Christy, the condition was code yellow at Bradley Memorial, which is behind me right about there on the horizon. You might be able to see the lights. Now, code yellow means that there is a major external disaster, and when the alarm sounded, everyone from security personnel to doctors to volunteers, even dietitians, they say, went to specific pre-assigned locations and duties. A spokesman there says the hospital's good state of readiness was shown by how few victims were transported on to regional hospitals such as Erlanger.
Everything went, under the circumstances, went very well inside the hospital as far as how our personnel responded.
Ballou says victims have been identified from 6 different states, some from as far away as Oklahoma and Florida. Volunteers here at the Hospital Disaster Center were kept busy talking with hundreds of concerned callers.
I'm waiting right now on his status, and then I'll call back and let the folks there know. He was real relieved about his friend.
One Bradley County EMS medic says it's one of the worst tragedies he's ever seen.
To me, the worst thing is smelling all the burn victims. That's something that once you smell it, you just never forget that.
Officials say volunteer response from the community in Bradley County has been overwhelming. Hundreds of people are donating blood here at Cleveland's Blood Assurance. An official says hundreds more have called to put their names on the donor list. A local motel has donated 20 rooms to accident victims and their families. As one nurse says, it restores your faith in mankind to see a community pull together like this in time of disaster.
Well, Dan, Bradley Memorial was put to the test in an emergency situation last week.
Yes, they were, and it seems that those same officials are feeling pretty good about their state of readiness here today, Christy. As you mentioned, last week was almost providential. In fact, it's interesting that you mentioned that. One official said that last week, yellow code drill, which they had, I think it was last Wednesday, seemed almost providential in the fact it was like a dress rehearsal for today's real disaster.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Well, this accident demonstrated to everyone the importance of air ambulances. Erlanger's Life Force, East Tennessee's Baptist Medflight, and Knoxville's Lifestar all responded to the scene. The pilots and paramedics not only transported the injured, but were able to assess the situation from the air and relay crucial information.
The value of the air services and the communication systems they have, we've never had that before in a disaster. But the Life Force guys were able to really communicate good information, and they were, with their contacts in the other emergency rooms, they were really able to keep us better informed than we would have ever been before. We called
15 people are dead and about 51 are injured. Now, there are a wide range of injuries. There are burns, head, neck, and back injuries. We've learned that the FBI has been called in to help identify the bodies. Many are so badly burned they're going to have to use dental records to try to match up. Many of the dead are from 6 different states. A temporary morgue has been set up at Jerry Smith's funeral home in Athens.
And a word on the traffic there. The northbound lane on I-75 is open, but it narrows to one lane around the scene of the accident. Now, the southbound lane is closed from the Decatur-Athens exit all the way to the Charleston exit. Now, McMinn sheriff officials suggest you take Highway 11 or 411 to get around the scene.
We have one confirmed fatality.
Yes, the official fatality list isn't due out until noon tomorrow, but we learned from the mobile newsroom tonight of one local victim. She is 52-year-old Patsy Smith of Etowah. Her husband, Tom, was also injured, and he's in Athens Community Hospital.